This is the Daily Tech News for Tuesday, April 15th, 2025. We tell you what you need to know, follow up on the context of those stories, and help each other understand.
Oh, we're very excited to have Bodie Grimm back on the show. He's going to tell us about BYD's 5-minute charging. Is this as good as it sounds? Do you need it? And we got more from your emails.
Sounds pretty good to me. I'm Jason Howell.
I am Tom Merritt.
Let's start with what you need to know with the big story. I will admit, there was a little bit of learning this morning in studying for this story. Apple is looking to improve its AI feature set, Apple Intelligence, by analyzing data directly on users' devices. Apple says it is not collecting or directly using private user data to train its LLM, its large language models. Instead, it's using a blend of Apple's synthetically generated information, which the company has used to train its models up until now, and then combining that with a sampling of localized information from the device itself. Now, by doing this kind of combo approach, Apple can differentiate between aspects of the synthetic data that are on point and are working and you know, the output that's expected and good, and data that doesn't align with real world experience, which is what Apple gets from the information that's, you know, coming in from the devices themselves. Now, Apple aims to improve its text-based AI tool set, you know, things like notification summaries, writing tools, message recaps. But really, I think the overall goal here is to improve all of the AI that's happening on its devices. Apple also talked about how local differential privacy, which is one method that they use, is being applied to improving Genmoji output. This is a method that Apple adopted that allows them to collect user usage data from devices, but only after private or unique data has been stripped from the device. It all happens locally on the device, which Apple really wants to make sure people know. All of this is opt-in, of course. Once this new system begins to roll out in a future beta for iOS, it would be iPadOS 18.5 and macOS 15.5. as well. So I learned a little something today about differential privacy. And I think the question that I have around this is that Apple sees itself as a privacy first company. And certainly when I read through how this is done, that seems to be the case. But I also know that there is this like bubbling, growing distrust of tech companies right now. And I don't think that Apple is immune to that, you know, because oftentimes perception is reality. And I wonder if this kind of thing, using data, even though they're doing it in a private sort of way on a device, using user data to kind of help and improve their AI systems, doesn't run the risk of putting Apple under the same kind of target as other tech companies that are, you know, kind of suffering from that kind of reputation right now.
Yeah. So outside of you, the listener who understands this stuff because you hear us talk about it every day and you follow it yourself, there are going to be two sets of people who are going to see the headline or see the post and not read very far into it and assume one of two things. On the extreme end, and these are the ones I don't think you can ever do anything about, which is I just don't trust Apple, right? There are people who are like, I don't care what they say. I don't believe them when they say they're protecting my privacy. And I hear that from a lot of people around a lot of companies. And I'm always like, well, then our conversation is over, because if you just don't trust Google or Apple or Amazon or Netflix, then it doesn't matter what they do, right? So why bother even listening to anything they say? Like that's a totally separate thing. But there are also going to be the people who just misunderstand and say, oh, so they're using my data now. I guess they have joined that camp. And it isn't that. And Apple has gone to great pains to explain why it isn't that. But that is a hard perception to combat. If you are someone who's going to want to combat that perception, I keep trying to wrap my head around the best way to explain this, because differential privacy is something that I've looked into before, and I kind of get what it's about, which is to say you are looking at the data on the device, drawing a conclusion from it, and then you only export the conclusion. You don't export the data itself, right? You're not collecting the data into the cloud and then analyzing it. That's kind of what Apple's doing here for the generative models as well, which is saying we're using synthetic data to train it. Then we go onto your device and we compare how well our synthetic data training compares to your real world examples, and we can say, oh, a real world example acts that way. Let's copy that. So they're not copying your actual email messages. They're copying the way those messages result in a summary or a notification or something like that. You've been looking at this closer than I have. Does that sound right?
No, that sounds absolutely right. And I think you're spot on. And I think, from my perspective, I read this and I'm like, okay, I think what Apple is doing here is actually really well done, and really kind of ties into Apple's kind of overarching commitment, public commitment to do things in a more private way. And so I understand that. I do, though, I agree with you that I think, perception in this case is very easy to get misunderstood. And for people who already have a mistrust of AI to begin with, of which there are quite a lot of people who fall into that camp, no matter what Apple does here, it's still going to be seen as, but you're using our data to make your systems better to create this thing I don't want on my phone in the first place. And
right.
I mean, like you said, there's probably not much you can do about that.
The funny thing is, they don't want it on their phone in the first place in a lot of cases because it's not very good. And Apple's like, yeah, the reason it's not very good is we're only using synthetic data to train it. So we're trying to make it better by doing this without taking your data and uploading it to the cloud or storing it. So they're between a little bit of a rock and a hard place. Not that I feel too bad for Apple with their piles of cash or anything, but that is what they're trying to do. They're trying to improve on the product in a responsible way. And from what I can tell, and from what people way smarter than me who know this subject really well can tell, they are preserving privacy here. They are again, they're not copying your data. They're comparing their results to the results on your device and saying, okay, that's where we got it wrong. Now we can improve our model without actually having to take your data, which I think is pretty clever.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, this comes up for me time and time again, is really at the end of the day, these AI systems, like whether you like AI and what they do or not, at the end of the day, if you're going to use it, you want it to be a good system. You want it to give you good information and represent what it should be and not false or inaccurate information. There's only so much you can do there. And the only way to do that is to feed it good information. And so this kind of falls into that camp too. It's and I would agree. I think Apple's probably doing it the right way here. Certainly there are a lot of other companies in AI that are not going through these lengths to preserve and protect their users. So I applaud Apple for that.
And in the end, hopefully it means I don't get a notification that tells me someone is dead who's not dead because it did a bad summary, right?
1,000%. That's hopefully the goal.
Well, we are able to have these discussions and get you thinking about them, getting you understanding them better, thanks to our listeners on Patreon. Big thanks to Ken Hayes, Philip Shane, Paul Boyer, and hey, we got a brand new patron named Naur. Welcome, everybody. Yeah.
Welcome, Naur.
Yeah.
Good to have you here. There is so much more we need to know today, so let's get to the briefs.
Yes. We don't have a lot of tariff news today, but the new ringing bell you're going to hear a lot about is this FTC versus Meta case that's going on in a U.S. District Court in Washington, D.C. We told you a little bit about it Monday. To catch you up, the U.S. Federal Trade Commission argues that Meta acquired Instagram and WhatsApp to eliminate competition and abused its subsequent market dominance by providing an inferior product riddled with ads and reduced privacy protection. That's the argument they're making in court, and therefore they want to unwind these acquisitions. Their ultimate goal is to get the court to order Meta to get rid of Instagram and WhatsApp. Meta argues that it did not acquire the companies simply to eliminate competition, nor did it lead to a monopoly position, even if that had been their intention, pointing at TikTok and YouTube and others as stiff competition. So that's where this case is going to be argued. Here are the significant bits from the courtroom since we last talked Monday. The FTC's lawyers are trying to define the market Meta operates in as a personal social networking market. So this is the crux of the case. If they can't convince the judge that Meta dominates a market, then the whole thing falls apart. The market has to be defined, and the way the FTC would like to define the market is personal social networking. Those are systems that involve connecting your friends and family. That's what they do. So that leaves out Twitter. That leaves out YouTube. That leaves out TikTok. In its argument, FTC is saying those are about followers. Those are about appealing to strangers. You might connect to friends and family, but it's not what they're about. The FTC considers the market for personal social networking to be 4 platforms: WhatsApp, Instagram, as you might have guessed, Snapchat, and MeWe. You may not be familiar with MeWe, but MeWe is a decentralized social network. It's been around since 2012, has 20 million registered users. Don't know what its active users are, but the FTC says that's it. That's the market. And if that's the market, Meta owns half of it and 80% of the usage of it. In opening arguments, Meta pointed to the increase in Instagram usage when TikTok went offline in the US briefly earlier this year as evidence that, I don't know, maybe TikTok should be part of this market. And they also pointed out, interestingly, that YouTube rose more than Snapchat when Facebook had an outage back in 2021, trying to point out, like, even when Facebook goes away, it's YouTube that benefits from it. So this market that you're talking about is a weird market. There were also some interesting emails that were divulged of Mark Zuckerberg saying something about, like, well, we had to pay $1 billion to keep competing, or Instagram would have outgrown us. Zuckerberg on the stand in this case said, like, yeah, no, that's what we said. That doesn't mean we're trying to eliminate competition. That's how you talk about things when you are in the process of motivating people, etc. He was pretty relaxed on the stand by all accounts. So as I said yesterday, I think this is going to end up being a very hard case for the FTC to show, but at least we know what their strategy is now.
That's kind of what I got rattling around my brain right now. I'm like, if that's what you're leveraging this on, is a network to connect friends and family. I mean, there is some truth to that, I suppose. Like when I stepped away from Facebook for a few years, what I noticed is that my connection to friends and family really dropped, you know? So, I mean, for me on an anecdotal personal level, sure. But that's a long way to go, I think, for this case. I'll be curious to see.
I think it's an argument you might be able to make for WhatsApp because it's group chats and messages. And even though there are businesses on there, you know, it is predominantly people messaging people they know. But maybe not in the United States. That's the problem there. We talked about that yesterday. Instagram, on the other hand, that's a lot about brands and brand deals and appeals. So I'm not sure if they can make that case or not, but I guess we'll find out.
I mean, maybe at one time, but not now. Yeah, right. I compare Instagram a lot more to YouTube than I do, or TikTok.
Well, and I guess at one time is what the FTC is going to say. Yeah. Like, maybe they've changed it to that now, but when they acquired it, it was...
Very, very interesting. Well, there were a few pieces of OpenAI news, so I just lumped them all together. So here it is real quick. OpenAI is planning to enter the social network arena. Speaking of social networks, according to multiple sources to The Verge, they say an early internal prototype of a ChatGPT image generation product integrates a social feed. It's unclear whether the social feature would ultimately be embedded into OpenAI's current products or spun out into its own app. Meta also rumored to be working on bringing a social feed into its AI product. X already has its Grok integration, which could serve as one example of what's to come. So, you know, Tom, it's a thing.
Hey, I like that.
And real quick, let's knock out another big piece of OpenAI news. Its new GPT 4.1 models launched yesterday. OpenAI says the new models excel, that's their word, at writing code and following instructions with a 1 million token context window. That means it's capable of taking in more than War and Peace, by the way. Its previous new hot model was GPT 4.5. That will soon be phased out of its API. And yes, you heard that correct. GPT 4.5, the old model, will be replaced by GPT 4.1, the new model. No confusion whatsoever.
That big guy,
huh? Is that how it works?
Yeah. I'm still stuck on whether OpenAI's social network will be a personal social network or not.
Oh, that's a really good question.
Japan's Fair Trade Commission issued a cease and desist order against Google, ordering the company to stop abusing its alleged dominance in the smartphone market by forcing Japanese manufacturers to pre-install and prioritize Google apps and services on Android devices. It's that old refrain. This isn't a court case. This is just an order, a cease and desist. The group determined that Google's control over the Google Play ecosystem enables it to apply pressure to local phone makers, like, in Japan's case, Sony and Sharp, and favor its search engine and Chrome browser. This is the first move of its kind by Japan against any major U.S. tech firm.
Man, we just keep hearing this refrain time and time again. It just makes it even more apparent that there is change in the air, as far as that's concerned.
Or at least people trying to affect change.
I mean, yes, exactly.
We'll see if
coming
those
from all directions,
blow
though.
Or not. Yeah.
I'm wondering if Google's strong enough to repel the winds of change. All right, prepare for an acronym salad. AMD teased its first 2-nanometer class chip, a Core Complex Die, also known as CCD, for the upcoming 6th-generation EPYC Venice processor. It's set to be the industry's first high-performance computing, that's HPC, CPU design on TSMC's advanced N2 process node.
FYI.
The announcement reflects the deep collaboration between AMC and TSMC, and the Venice chip is expected to launch in 2026. It's going to be leveraging the Zen 6 microarchitecture. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So if those acronyms don't mean anything to you, 2-nanometer class chips. So big more high performance chips coming from AMD. That's kind of the upshot. We have more chip news to dazzle you with. NVIDIA unveiled its new RTX 5060 GPU lineup. So we've had the 5080, we've had the 5070. Now we're getting down into the mid-range with the RTX 5060 Ti launching in 2 versions on April 16th, an 8GB model for $379 and a 16GB model for $429. The 5060 is priced at $299, set to arrive in May. That comes with that 8 gigabytes of VRAM. Both cards support DLSS 4 and multi-frame generation, though the 8GB VRAM version is getting some negative reaction because games need more memory than that. The RTX 5060 will also be available in laptops from big name brands, and those laptops will start around $1,099.
Okay. Yeah, 8 gigs. Doesn't sound like a lot. That's not even a lot for like a smartphone these days.
I mean, we are down to the 60, but that's a little low even for the mid.
Yeah. The latest Google Play Services update brings with it a new security feature for Android devices that automatically triggers a device reboot once it's been locked for 3 consecutive days. This returns the device to a before first unlock state. That basically means that everything's encrypted on the device, biometric access is disabled, and you have to enter the correct passcode in order to enter, and then all that gets re-enabled. The iPhone did get a similar feature to this, named Inactivity Reboot, last year with iOS 18.1. And as for this, Android users can expect the new feature to begin rolling out to devices over the course of the next week or so.
Yeah, it's not really theft prevention in that case so much as it is just like inattention prevention.
Yeah. It's like, screw you. If it is theft prevention, it's more like a screw you, this doesn't work anymore. What are you going to do now?
Yeah, it's like maybe. if you find an old Android phone that's been lying around for a few days, if you lose your phone, I guess it would be prevention against somebody getting your data if you lose it. A quick update to yesterday's delayed One UI 7 update. Samsung's now expecting the update to restart soon. They didn't tell us anything. A Samsung Solutions manager went to the Korean community forums, this was mostly affecting Korean users, to explain that the pause was related to some issues requiring maintenance.
Wow, thanks.
I looked at the Korean. It translates as some issues required. It doesn't say anything. But the inspection is now complete, so whatever it was, they figured it out, and prepare yourself for some One UI 7 goodness coming to your Samsung phones shortly.
Oh, yay. And we'll probably never know what that maintenance.
Probably not. Somebody might be able to reverse engineer it. Get on that, Jane Manchun Wong. You can do it.
You can do it. Chipolo launched its latest tracker, the Chipolo Pop, which works seamlessly with both Apple's and Google's finding networks. The new model retains features like phone finding, customizable ringtones, out-of-range alerts, remote selfie shutter, also has a 300-foot Bluetooth range, and a user-replaceable battery that lasts a full year. The Chipolo Pop can be had in 6 very vibrant colors for $29 on the Chipolo site and Amazon.
And in the past, we've covered several stories where the U.S. uncovers a cyber attack and names the perpetrators, who are often Chinese nationals. In a rare occurrence today, we have the reverse. China uncovering a cyber attack on the networks used by the Asian Winter Games in Harbin, China, and naming 3 U.S. national security agents, Catherine A. Wilson, Robert J. Snelling, and Stephen W. Johnson, that they suspect carried out the attacks. Police also say the same people carried out attacks on Huawei. Just found, I never see this. I always see the other. So I thought it was notable.
Indeed.
Those are the essentials for today. Let's dive a little deeper into an ongoing story.
All right. BYD recently announced vehicles that you could charge up in 5 minutes. 5 minutes. That sounds pretty amazing. But how does it work? And are there any related downsides? Well, Tom, you talked to Bodie Grimm from the Kilowatt Podcast to find out.
Bodie, thanks again for joining us, man.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate you having me back on.
All right. So tell us about this crazy 5-minute charger we've heard about.
Yes. So there's a lot to talk about. BYD announced 2 EVs, which are based on their 1,000-volt Super E platform architecture. The 2 EVs are the Han L and the Tang L. The Super E platform that BYD is using is they're using the new and improved Blade batteries that we talked about on our previous episode. And these new Blade batteries can handle a faster ion transfer with less resistance. So that means faster charging without the heat. And according to BYD, the Super E platform is capable of a peak, and we'll talk about this in a second, but a peak charging speeds of 1,000 kilowatts. That would allow you to put 400 kilometers or 249 miles of range back into your battery in about 5 minutes.
Wow.
But this only works if the battery is low. So here's where the peak comes from. So imagine you're filling a water balloon. At first, you can fill that balloon up very quickly, but as the balloon gets fuller, you have to slow down so the battery or the balloon doesn't pop. So charging an EV is a very similar way. When the battery is low, you can charge very fast. As it gets closer to being full, that charging speed slows way down.
Okay. So as always in unbelievable claims, they may not be as close to the unbelievable claim in reality. What are the advantages, though, of an 1,000-volt architecture?
Well, I mean, obviously faster charging.
Sure.
The higher the voltage, the lower the current needed to deliver the same amount of power. So you can use like thinner and lighter wiring, which reduces weight. Thinner wire also reduces resistance in the wiring components, and this means less energy loss overall and better overall efficiency.
And even when you get to the slower charging, towards capacity, it still has a lot of advantages because of that faster charging. So what are the actual downsides to this? What are you trading off?
It's more expensive for sure. The higher voltage does take longer to discharge. I think it's supposed to discharge in about 5 seconds. So how long it actually takes to discharge, whether it's 5 or 7, I think the industry standard is 5. So while this is not important for maybe the average person, first responders and mechanics need to be aware of this when they're working around this kind of thing.
So when you're talking about discharge, like getting the battery depleted so it's no longer a threat in the case of a disaster or a risk in the case of repair, is that what you're talking about?
Well, the battery doesn't deplete itself. So when they're usually some sort of pyrotechnic device in there that pops off that separates the rest of the components from the battery. The battery still retains a charge. The rest of the components that are removed from the battery, and then that energy is supposed to disperse.
I see.
So
okay.
yeah,
and it takes longer for that to happen.
A little bit. It does. Yeah. It didn't say in the article that I read exactly how long that took, but if it takes 5 seconds for the average system, I can't imagine it takes too much longer.
Yeah. Okay. So, but something to be aware of. Any other downsides?
There was a lot of other engineering stuff that I read on Magna International's website. Magna builds cards for all sorts of companies. If you want to read that article, just shoot me an email and I'll pass it along to you, because there was a lot. There was a lot in there.
So, but what would we notice as a result of those engineering challenges? Is that just it's harder to make, or is that just what's making it costlier?
Yeah, it's just making it cost.
Okay.
They're like the components. Everything you touch now has to have a different component. You can't use an off-the-shelf component for a 200 volt system for 1,000 volts. So you got to upgrade all the way down the line.
Now, as you may have guessed, you can't just use 5-minute charging on every car. You got to use those two models that Bodie talked about. So what other pieces need to be in place for this to work?
So you definitely need chargers that are capable of delivering 1,000 kilowatts and supporting 1,000-volt systems. BYD says that it plans on building 4,000 of these DC fast chargers across China. And again, each one of them will be capable of delivering 1,000 kilowatts. And that is no small task throughout the 8 or 9 years that I've been doing this show. I've talked to several people who are on teams that were responsible for doing this for Tesla and other companies, deploying these DC fast chargers. And the first thing to consider is, where's the best place to put them? Like, you don't want to put them in a field in the middle of nowhere. This is very expensive.
Yeah.
And because BYD is very popular in China, they probably already know where they need to put them because they have all the data from the car. But once you know where to put it, you either have to own the site, lease the land, or talk to the property owners who currently own it and make a deal with them. That takes time. Once you've done that, then you need to get regulatory approval. And I don't know what that looks like in China, but I know in the United States, in some places that could be difficult. But the biggest problem is most of these sites, even on big commercial properties, they don't have the electrical capacity on site. So they have to bring in more electricity, which means you're looking at permits, trenching, transformers. You need to upgrade, electric boxes, the whole thing. And that takes more time, more paperwork, and more cost.
So that's for China too, that we're talking about. They also want to sell these in Europe, which means they have to do that in Europe. If they want to sell them anywhere else in the world, they would have to do the same thing for you to be able to take advantage of that. And certainly if you're in a market where it's not being sold and you're like, I want to get that thing, you would have to buy it and buy the charger yourself. And then you'd only be able to use that one charger yourself, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is BYD is a big company and they've done really great things. So it's not like I'm saying they can't do this.
No,
I'm just saying this is a lot of money invested that may or may not pay off.
Yeah. So the question then becomes, how big of a deal is 5-minute charging? I mean, it sounds great. Everybody loves the idea of it, but when we step back and think about it, people also think they need more range than they actually need usually. Do we need 5-minute charging?
I think if we had to answer this question 5 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago, people would say yes. But now EV owners have adapted the way that they drive and charge their vehicles. Most of the time you're charging at home. If you can't charge at home, maybe you can charge at work. If you can't charge at work, then you're using a DC fast charger somewhere or a level 2 charger like at Whole Foods or whatever. You're finding ways around this. I think that less than 1% of the time this will be beneficial to the folks that own the vehicles that actually can take advantage of this charging speed. And those are probably going to be people who have long commutes or possibly people who use their car to make money. If you live in an apartment or a condo without EV charging, maybe this is beneficial to you in some way if you live close to one.
Yeah. But I could see yes, you're a delivery driver or you're doing a ride hailing service with your car. You might need to recharge a lot more. But it's not lost on me as somebody who doesn't even have an EV that most people just charge their EVs overnight and then never have to charge them because they don't go far enough in a day for it to matter. So 5-minute charging wouldn't even really be necessary most of the time, it sounds like.
Yeah, and if they wanted to, and I don't remember what exactly the range was for the topped out range, but let's say they wanted to charge to 100%, they're going to get to, let's say 80% real fast. But then the rest of the time is however long it takes. So
yeah, even
if you wanted to charge up, it's still not going to be 5 minutes for taking a long road trip.
Sure. It's like filling up 3/4 tank though, I guess there's an analog there, but yeah, it does feel like something don't get me wrong. I think this is great. And if it becomes something that is easy, then people are going to take advantage of it, where they can take advantage of it, which is probably going to be in mainland China. So I'm not trying to poo-poo 5-minute charging, but if you're not getting it, you may not be missing out quite as much as you might have thought. Thanks, Bodie, for helping us understand this, man. If people want to get more of your kind of information, where should they go?
They could just go to 918digital.com. And if you want to email me and get that Magnus Steyr article, because I know a lot of people are nerds that listen to this podcast because they are that listen to mine. It's Bodie, BODIE at 918digital.com. And I'll pass that along to you as well.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, what would you like to hear us talk about on the show? We're always looking for ideas. We have good ideas, but we always want to know what you want us to cover. And one way to let us know is our subreddit. You can submit stories and vote on them at reddit.com/r/Daily Tech News Show.
We end every episode of DTNS with some shared wisdom. And today, a person named Jason, who is not actually this Jason that's talking right now, has this question about yesterday's show. They're helping us understand.
Yeah, this Jason writes, I had a couple of random questions and concerns about the Dolphin LLM. I wonder about hallucinations. Practically, it could impact the research. More whimsically, if they played back to the dolphins, it could really mess with their minds. One thing about that story, before I finish this, is that it is narrowly trained just on the dolphin sounds, so hallucinations would be minimized. But these things could happen. Jason says, Are we in danger of creating the 9 billion clicks and whistles of God? Which, if you don't get that reference, it's a reference to an Arthur C. Clarke story. But I appreciate it. Appreciate the reference, Jason. Good stuff. Thanks, man.
AI allowing us to talk to animals.
Yeah, no, that is a really, really, really fun story. And a, Google doing AI stuff in the world, open source in a way that helps science. So, certainly they're doing it partly for the PR, but good story. I
love hearing more, about that and health advancements and all that kind of stuff. That's where I think the real meat and potatoes gets, over the course of the next handful of years when it comes to AI.
Well, be like Jason. Be like all the Jasons, this one, the one that emailed. Send us some insight on a story. If you're sitting there going like, well, you know what? I know about that. Share it with us. Feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com.
Indeed. Thanks to Bodie. Thanks to the other Jason and all Jasons who are listening, by the way, for contributing to today's show. And thank you for being along for Daily Tech News Show. This show is made possible by our patrons at patreon.com/DTNS. If you want music news and you have less than 5 minutes for it, check out dailymusicheadlines.com. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.